Like, what about the jokes that have already been sort of established in the community, and it's kind of not a source thing; it's just kind of an observation, and whether it's wrong or right, but now it's kind of that association is already there, so people just kind of go off of that, whether it's in an anime's budget or
Budget.
the budget issues, the budget kicks in. Stuff about like the industry that people don't really have insider information to, but there have assumptions that have been made, and kind of that now, since you're playing again to that audience, it's sort of you kind of reference that, and that's kind of a go-to instead of something that kind of needs to be looked into because everyone else collectively kind of already sees it that way.
So I understand the general idea of like a sort of like ongoing joke or a recurring joke within a community. And so it's one of those weird things where like on paper, I think it's fine. But the problem is, once again, to sort of think about who is this joke for? Because if it's just a bunch of people who are just sitting around, harping on budget, like like a bunch of lemmings or something. I don't know what kind of animal repeats itself. I don't know. Anyhow, so if it's just a bunch of people sitting around in a circle, like harping on budget or joking around budget, but if they all know that budget is not the thing that defines good or bad animation, then that's not a problem, right? It's just some sort of weird joke. But let's say somebody else comes in. Somebody else comes in, has absolutely no idea what's going on, and then they just keep hearing the sort of budget jokes sort of circulate around. They might legitimately think, oh, I guess it is a budget problem, So that's one of the sort of like effects of it. So you can say, well, it's just a joke that's kind of constantly been thrown around as a kind of, goofy kind of thing. But the problem with that is that one, you can't control exactly where it goes and who it goes to. And also two, you can't control who it changes its minds with regards to.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be all like, oh, no, remember, it's just a joke, because it's every time the budget joke comes up, it's never going to come up with, some sort of like legalese, like written caveat asterisk. We're saying, warning, this is actually not a joke. It's just going to be circulated as is. Now, does that mean that insider jokes are bad or and that sort? No, not necessarily. But the problem, of course, is that when people do push back on that, when they say, well, hold on, wait a minute, guys, it's not actually a budget thing, that's when you get into situations where people just throw the wall up and then they say, well, it's just a joke. That's the problem. That's where it becomes the problem. When they say, well, bro, come on, it's just a joke. It's just a joke that this community does,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like actually like can be pretty harmful, especially in certain cases where, people take their frustrations out on the staff members they can find on like Twitter and social media and stuff. And, they take a lot of misconceptions out on these people, like I'm not sure I'm sure you're probably aware, but possibly didn't see in real time, like all the issues with MAPPA and the Attack on Titan staff where, people think that MAPPA and the Attack on Titan staff are responsible for the scheduling and the quality and the budget when it was made by a production studio. But if you just constantly joke about like MAPPA budget, they're not going to realize that like these individual people are not actually responsible for the quality on a higher level. So, it's like you can see the snowball effect and that it actually does like the level of ignorance being propagated by people for the sake of a joke, like anime budget, LOLXD, it actually comes back to these people and they're like, hey, stop harassing us on Twitter. Like, and it can be really harmful like that. So I think some people might not be aware that a lot of that does come from like the misinformation that's spread on how like anime is created, the scheduling, the production, where the money goes, etc.
Yeah, and so I wanna cite an incredibly dramatic example that's not anime related. So sorry about that. But incredibly dramatic example that everybody probably knows is A Dingo Ate My Baby.
It sounds familiar.
It was an Australian woman. It was an Australian couple who went out camping, and then her baby went missing, and then she said, "Well, a dingo ate my baby." and she was eviscerated internationally in media. The whole joke of, oh my God, a dingo ate your baby, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody thought that, she was just hysterical. She actually went to prison because they thought she killed her baby. And then it turns out years later, they found the remains of her baby in a dingo den.
Oh my God.
Because
Wow.
it ate her baby. But
Kinda
here's
wild.
the thing, right? It was circulated as a joke. It was
Wow.
circulated as
Yeah.
a joke. So you might think, okay, well, it's a joke, in comedy, things should be able to, people should be able to joke about anything in comedy. That is true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that circulation of that joke became fact to a lot of people. The only thing people knew was that the dingo ate her baby, and then that it was a joke. Because the ideological contour was that the dingo didn't actually eat her baby, because dingoes don't do that, because they just look like cute little Australian doggos,
Yeah.
She must have killed her baby. But it turns out, this woman was horribly maligned as a result of that. You can also talk about it in the context of, like, say, you can also talk about it in the context of, like, say, the McDonald's hot coffee.
I was thinking of that one. Yeah, I was thinking of that one.
That was a joke. That was spread as a joke. You got Kramer spilling hot coffee on himself in Seinfeld and all that kind of stuff, right? That was wielded as a weapon to sort of hide the fact that, no, this lady got burned horribly, and she tried to get them to pay for her surgery, and they just would not buckle.
Yeah.
And then when the judge finally ruled on that, what happened? Well, it was presented as like, oh my God, she spilled hot coffee on herself and she got, like $10 million for that. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Jokes are incredibly, so there's nothing wrong with a joke on its own. The sort of like imminent thing, there's nothing wrong with a joke on its own. But the whole I was about to say porpoise, like dolphins. But the whole purpose of a joke is for it to be relatable and also for it to be transmittable. It spreads like wildfire, but it also sort of feeds into pre-existing mentalities about certain things.
Yeah.
Now, that's not necessarily wrong on its own, but if that joke is built upon potential misunderstandings or potential sort of political or certain intentions, or if it shapes things in specific ways, then some of the trouble now, of course, is that it creates a sort of particular mindset or culture associated with that joke. So if you have enough people harping on budget, eventually people are legitimately going to think it is a budget thing. Or if you have enough people harping on, say, this thing is trash, but so am I, then enough people are just going to legitimately just go with, yeah, it is trash.